So the two podcasts were really interesting, and honestly, it surprised me. I thought they were going to be a little bit boring, but it turned out I was really interested in them through the entirety of it. So while listening to the first podcast, I was really interested that integration of students in the classroom cut the education gap in half. That was really a shocking statistic, and it made me think a lot about what our education system and like districts are doing with their students. Um, I never really thought of an achievement gap amongst different races since I lived in a place of many different cultures. I grew up with many different people around me, and it wasn't something that I really thought of until I looked outside, like with this podcast. Um, so the first and second podcast differ in slight ways. They both focus on integration, but each one has a different storyline, focusing on different people. Um, the first podcast acknowledges the need and want for integrated schools and how, under certain laws, students from Normandy would be able to go to schools across town, Francis Hall. This would create a great integration program, however, faced with a lot of negative responses. This was a heavy subject amongst the town and the neighboring town. Despite all the negative efforts of the Francis Hall parents to not let any of the transfers from Normandy in, Maria, one of the main people in the first podcast, was able to go and really succeed. And she had a few bumps along the way, but she was able to graduate from that school. The second podcast focuses on one girl and her decision to go to a predominantly white school for her college. She was simply curious and wanted to know what white wasted was and magnet schools specifically. So for Maria, in the first podcast, Francis Hall gave her a much better approach to the future in education. The teachers and staff were of better quality, which provided a better learning experience for her. Whereas Normandy, Maria was not receiving the quality attention or teacher investment that she and other students needed. For example, her mom didn't receive a call that she was receiving bad grades when she was at Normandy until she confronted the teachers. And the teacher simply said that there's too many kids in this school to contact each parent. So that in itself is just like a reflection of who these teachers are in the district and the way that they're not getting their education needs met. For Kiana, she went through to a different cultured school in high school, and then for her college years, she wanted to go to a predominantly white school just to see what it was like and how she could learn from them. Um, so her eyes were open to the white culture in a sense, and this created an education that brought together that achievement gap. She wanted to see what this culture was like, and she learned from it. She learned from her roommates, and it jump started her future. So once I start in the field of education, I hope to share with my fellow educators that integration will bridge the gap of achievement, most definitely. I think that it's such an important thing to consider, considering that we are a melting pot in America and we learn from each other in different ways. And it's not necessarily just learning from different cultures, it's learning from the teachers in certain places and the education that they're going to be giving, the quality of it. I think it's a really important issue to push, and I think that there's so much more that we need to complete before we can say that this achievement gap is being really closed. Um, I think that beyond the education system, this topic goes into our careers and our future. Working with others is huge. We're going to be working with many different people in the future and different cultures, different religions, just different people. And I think that all starts in the classroom. I think that that's something that we need to figure out how to work with now before our kids go into the future with it without that future knowledge. Um, so we learn and build new skills in the classroom that benefit our futures. So why not integrate integration in those classrooms as well? A really fun tool that we were given was that education, the National Center for Education Statistics website. And when I was searching, I used my district, and I thought that I grew up with many different cultures around me, which I did. I felt like I did. But it turns out that predominantly I live in a white area. 60% are white, 2% are black, 21% are Hispanic or Latino, and 13% are Asian, and 3% is other races. So it got me to thinking that, there's so much more than I think that's out there. And it's just interesting to see like the straight up statistics and not just what I perceive. But yeah, thank you so much.